Welcome to Brain Vision.
So this question, it's kind of like a true and false question. We are given 4 different statements, and we want to know which one really explains this curve. What happens to this curve is that we have this diode, and it has this IV relationship. We can see that when the voltage is below a certain amount, this diode is not really linear, but then when the temperature increases at a certain voltage, the current increases. And we want to know why does the current increase when the temperature increases. And we are given a couple of different statements. Pretty much what happens is that statement A says that the band gap becomes larger. So the electric pair carries more energy because band gap gets larger. And it just doesn't happen. The band gap is not dependent on temperature. It's dependent on the particular property of the molecule. It's dependent on the lattice of it. It's dependent on the way atom is distributed and what atom it is. It is not dependent on temperature. So this certainly is not true. And then B says more electrons can move in conducting band. So we have the number of electrons goes up. This is possible. This is actually it's quite reasonable, and the reason is because when temperature goes up, there is more thermal motion, and you can imagine it when it gets up, the electrons will have more freedom. They are not frozen there, so more electrons will be able to move. So part number B is correct. Then we have statement C. Statement C says all of the electrons in the valence band move to the conducting band. The diodes start to behave like a metal, and it starts to follow Ohm's law. This is, well, firstly, it says all of electrons. Well, this is certainly not correct. And the diode start to behave like a metal. It follows Ohm's law. All right. Well, I mean, so firstly, when it says all of the electrons, we know it's not going to be right. Not all of the electrons will be able to move. And the second thing is that this just doesn't really explain why there are more current going on. Like the latter part of this statement when it says it started to behave like a metal, it started to follow Ohm's law. Well, we don't know whether this is true or false, but it certainly does not. It's not an explanation of why the current goes up when the temperature goes up. And when it says all of the electrons, certainly not correct. Finally, part D, which says the acceptor and donor impurity atoms are free to move through the metal, which causes the current to be higher. The acceptor and donor impurity atoms are free to move through the material. So, again, atoms are not free to move within a material. It's solid. This is even worse than saying electrons can move freely, because electrons do move freely in a metal, but atoms never move freely except it's liquid or something, or like if it's gas or something. So it says atoms move freely. Certainly not correct. Atoms are where they are. They have this lattice structure, and they distribute according to certain laws. They do not move freely in a solid. So we can say that number B is a correct